everyone, and welcome to the first episode of r/pro revenge on my channel. So, to start off with, we have a little story called Neighbours from Hell. Let's have a read. So, this happened a year or so ago, but I figured I'd share it here. Little backstory. Okay, so I live in a flat apartment on the first floor. There's 6 flats in the building, one on each side of the ground floor and first and second floor. Everyone got along great until the neighbours from hell moved directly above me. These two self-titled twants are absolute a-holes, constantly banging and heavy walking, doors slamming, screaming, matches, the lot. The previous couple had a newborn baby and we never heard a peep out of them. The police has also been called a few times as they began smoking inside the apartment. Very strict rules against it. Claimed they shouldn't have to walk all those stairs, yet the couple that lived opposite them both smoked and went out to have a smoke. They also smoked weed in the building. The place stunk. We were annoyed, so we got in contact with the building management company to do something about it. They sent out letters to everyone's post reminding people smoking wasn't allowed in the building. E-cigarettes were okay in your own apartment, but not in the communal areas. This went on for months. Eventually, these two a-holes started smoking their precious weed in the car, then coming back into the building. Fine, not my problem. Until one day, you could tell they were getting high as they'd sit in the car for up to an hour. They decided to go for a drive and almost hit a child. It's a huge estate with a park nearby, so optimal place for children to play and, well, be children. Child's parent called the police. Same old crap, nothing happens. Even though they were under the influence of cannabis. Okay, if they won't do it, I will. I waited patiently. Every time I heard a single step too loud, my blood boiled. But I was biding my time. One day I came home and they're having another screaming match, then giggling, followed by more banging and screaming. Some more. I had a shit day at work, really awful mood, and had enough. I called the police, not the non-emergency number, but the emergency one. I put on my best "oh my god" voice and tell them. The couple upstairs have been smoking weed. They drove home and they got in a huge fight. I just heard the girl shout, "No, please, Chad, no," because it's always Chad. True. I tell them that I'm concerned something may have happened to her, and the screaming has stopped. There have been funny-looking people walking into the building at all hours, and everyone in the building thinks he's dealing in drugs. Police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 cars, 3 officers. I guess my bloody murder worries made them hurry. They find the girl passed out and almost ODing. God knows what she took. And him butt naked. They give him time to get dressed and he goes off to the station. We later found out that he had enough drugs and weapons in his house to prosecute, along with all our complaints and the hitting of a child with a vehicle while under the influence of a B-class drug. She got a huge fine. I've heard different amounts from people, but the most used one is 2,000 and 6 months community service, as well as mandatory drug tests. He got 3 years in jail. We all thought they rented the apartment upstairs. They didn't. Apparently the guy's grandmother was some self-made millionaire, and in the hose construction business, and bought him the house. She must have been crushed when her golden boy was arrested. Moral of the story is the building is much quieter, doesn't stink of weed, children are safe, and there aren't unwanted people traipsing in and out of our building at all hours. Okay, so this is a pretty simple one. It's cool that he managed to get his revenge for this horrible neighbour without having to resort to any sort of underhanded tactics or anything. Just a simple call the police at the right moment. And I do know how sometimes it can seem like a simple thing, but when you try it in practice, it is kind of a pick your moment, get the cops in at the right moment. Nice real question. Yeah. Yeah, as I say, pretty simple story. It's a nice small start. So I guess we move on to, let's hope for something bigger next. Fire me for a bullshit reason and then blame me for your problems you caused. enjoy no longer having a company. I feel like this one may be bigger and more intense. So, okay. Several years ago, I used to work for a video game company that was developing its first game. It was a pretty stereotypical startup vibe, open air working floor, foosball table and beanbag chairs in a chill room. Angel investors behind it run by a bunch of ambitious 20-somethings, basically the whole 9 yards. The company had already been up and running for at least several months before I was hired on by my boss, who owned/ran the company, was a friend of a friend, and seemed excited to have me join the team. It was my first big city job after finishing school and moving from a smaller town, and I was excited to make my mark on the industry. What I didn't know at the time is that I was walking into a goddamn disaster, that I was going to go from already rotten to something straight out of a dramatic movie. Okay. We were a fairly small team working on the game, and everyone was nice enough. When I got hired, we would go out for lunch together, bought each other coffees, followed each other on social media, chatted back and forth via instant messaging, and we all got along fairly well, or so I thought. Within my first 2 months or so, I started to spot problems. Work wasn't getting done on schedule, team leads weren't communicating well, there were undercurrents of drama and tension in the office, etc. So I brought up the problems I was seeing. What I realised much later is that these problems all boiled down to my boss being a horrible person who had no business sense when it came to running a company, but I'll get to that aspect in a moment. Me being me, when I spotted these problems, I quickly launched into a full organisational fix-it mode and accidentally designated myself project manager for the whole game and office without realising the minefield I was getting into. We also had a parent company of sorts via one of the angel investigators, and I began to collaborate with them more closely to implement strategies to help get us back on track so the game could be successful. Some of the team was okay with me spearheading the organisation and recognised the improvements I was making, but others had started to resent me for the work I was doing, and they actively pushed back against the changes I was trying to make. I didn't realise at the time, but trying to fix things, my boss was one of the people I'd pissed off. I also didn't know at the time that he liked to pit people at his office against each other to cause drama and infighting, because he found the drama funny, and that's when the pettiness towards me started and continued over the next few months, even after I got fired. More on that in a moment. Vague booking and subtweeting, anonymous harassment comments left on some of my personal online sites, which eventually traced back to someone's at the office. There was a clear change in people's attitudes towards me, even it's like one of the developers having a party and inviting everyone in the office but me. I later saw a note about the party that said, "Don't tell this guy." All that shit made my work harder to do and made the office feel toxic, to say the least. The job was sucking my soul day by day. I was getting tired of being treated like I murdered puppies because I was trying to hold our development team to a production schedule, and I knew the company was struggling financially because we were long overdue on major milestone deliveries, and our investors were starting to get tired of floating the whole team. While all this was going on, I was also getting tired of my boss's increasingly aggressive attempts at getting me to sleep with him. Which I kept turning down. Over the course of my working there, he went from charming to lewd to outright crossing boundaries, and in retrospect, I'm pretty sure he's at least a narcissist, if not a sociopath. I'm not here to kink shame, but he told me repeatedly about how he was heavily into BDSM and what he liked to do. TLDR, he's the kind of guy who gets off on having control and causing pain and doing physical harm to others. While I was working, he would DM me gross stuff like, "I want to crawl under my desk," and like how he wanted to crawl under my desk and get me off, and would awkwardly laugh it off because he didn't want the office to feel any more hostile towards me than it already did. They sorry, I would awkwardly laugh it off because I didn't want the office to feel more hostile towards me than it already did. This was long enough before #MeToo that I didn't really feel comfortable speaking out about it, and it's not like we had an HR department that I could complain to about this behaviour. Fast forward to the 6-month mark of me working here, give or take, between me rejecting the boss repeatedly, the way most of the team was treating me, and the company's financial situation, I was 0% surprised when I got let go for financial reasons. I was glad to leave the company behind forever, or so I thought. Oh god, what's going to happen now? A few months later, I got the shock of my life when a courier delivered legal documents to me. The company was trying to sue me for sabotaging the game and causing irreparable damage, or so they claimed. At this point, I hadn't worked there for a while and would have no way to do what they were claiming I did. Not to mention that the game had launched prior to their suing me, so they should have had plenty of time to find and fix the problems if I had actually caused them, which I didn't. Despite knowing they were in the wrong, they were irrationally demanding that I turn over all my personal electronic devices to a digital forensics expert of their choosing for analysis, and they were threatening legal action against me for damages to the tune of millions. Oh, what had actually happened was that the game had launched, sales were not great, and that there were a lot of lukewarm reviews, which was 100% due to the game being behind schedule due to poor planning, infighting, and still having some bugs on release because the whole creation process had been mismanaged from well before I started working there. Of course, this was all due to the boss having getting off on having power but having no idea how to run a company, and then getting mad when I tried to fix things. But I guess I made a convenient scapegoat to blame for these failings instead, because that was the rational and mature thing to do. Needless to say, I was unnerved by the legal threats but did my research and dug my heels in. I educated myself on pertinent laws. I refused to comply with their lists of demands. I gave my side of the story to the lawyers that were representing them, and as a part of my defence, I presented as evidence the chat logs from my boss saying all those unwelcome, sexually explicit things to me. I outlined in very clear terms the ways in which I was being harassed and mistreated while I was doing my job, and I painted a larger picture behind the circumstances when I left. At first, the lawyers tried to deflect and disavow my evidence, at least outwardly, and there was a bunch of back and forth as they made changing demands. But within a short amount of time, the case was suddenly dropped. Then the lawyers were no longer representing the game company, and then the game company itself was closed because they weren't profitable to the main parent company, who had been the main angel investigator. I do feel bad for the people there who had treated me well, who had also ended up losing their jobs, but I think most of them bounced back into better jobs with other companies once the dust had settled. Either way, we were all better off being out of that toxic environment. To this day, I have no idea how large of a legal bill they ran up, but my boss and his cronies apparently thought their targeted campaign against me was going to make them money and cause me further harm. Instead, it resulted in all of them losing their jobs and losing the entire company all at once. The best part is that I never spent a dime on legal counsel for myself. The only thing that fight cost me was my time, and I effing won, despite having no formal legal training. If that's not a testament to my ability to think rationally and solve problems, I don't know what is. This whole situation was their loss in more ways than once. Okay, well that's not fun. So yeah, I mean, honestly, all I can say is I'm glad that this ended up being sorted out, because obviously when you've got an entire company that's willing to throw you under the bus, it's yeah, that must have been terrifying. So we've got comments of a good reminder to always keep evidence in the circumstance. Very true. Yes, literally always do that. for sure. Anytime you're being harassed, even, yeah, just not even that, just in general. Because at this point, it's not even just the fact that they're harassing her, it's the fact that they're trying to use her as a scapegoat. That was honestly, it was just really twisted story. I was kind of hoping for something fun and enjoyable, but this one, it's just mostly, I'm glad she didn't have it turn out even worse than it could be. Let's keep looking for something more fun that's got something funny. How long is this? That's on all right size. Okay. Me and my friend's revenge on my r/nice guy ex-boyfriend and his r/entitled parents. So it's just like r/inception. It's just ticking all of those boxes. Okay. A little backstory. I broke up with my boyfriend 5 months ago for a bunch of reasons, one of them being the fact that he would act like an entitled prick when he had the chance. Why did I date him in the first place, you ask? Well, since we were good friends and had a bunch of interests in common, like art and gaming, and he was the first person to ask me out ever, so I said yes. We dated for a while, but after realising how insufferable his true colours were, I left him. Now, onto the story. So, he wasn't taking our breakup well at all. He would leave nasty notes in my locker bag and even mailbox since he knew where I lived. But that was the tip of the iceberg. He would come up to meet me at school and loudly proclaim how much of a, and I quote, blind and stupid bitch I was for breaking the hearts of someone as nice and good looking as himself. I wish I was kidding. Safe to say, me and my friend got sick of it pretty quickly, especially since he would interrupt us whenever we were talking so we could all listen to his high and mighty speeches. He would also ask everyone out loud at lunch if they would want to see my nudes, which he didn't have since I never sent him any. Good choice. This went on for a while. One time when I was about to head home, I saw his dad waiting by his fancy sports car. Not big on cars, so I don't know what brand it was, but it did look expensive. Waiting to pick him up. So I tried talking to him about what's been happening, hoping he would help me out. Spoiler alert, he didn't. He instead ignored everything and started going on a tirade about how sad I made his son and that I am the reason he has depression. I was fuming but said nothing. Here comes the revenge part of the story. For reference, E, my complete ass of an ex, ED is ex's dad, also interpreted as entitled dad. EM is his mum, also interpreted as entitled mum. Z is my best friend. H is best friend's sister. Me is me. After months of putting up with this shit, since going to the faculty of school wouldn't solve anything, I did try, trust me, but they said they couldn't do anything about it. Zed came up to me one day saying that he did something pretty stupid, but that wouldn't help my situation. Apparently, E had hit on his sister, H, saying that he had always loved her and how he wants her as his girlfriend. H turned him down, and E went full-out nice guy on her. Zed, being the stereotypical overprotective older brother that he is, came up with a plan that day after this happened. We had a gym class now, since E is a super trashy person and leaves his shit everywhere, even when he's in the guy's locker room. It was pretty easy for Zed to find E's jacket, which was thrown onto the floor. Mind you that the jacket was probably worth more than my whole closet. So Zed had taken a small pouch that was filled with God knows what, but it had a terrible smell. Zed has a cat, so I assumed it was some rotting cat food or something like that, but he never told me what it actually was, so he placed that into the pocket of his jacket along with a note saying, "Stay away from my sister and me. Good luck with the smell," which did explain the fact that both Zed and E smelled like death for a week, but Zed said it was worth it. However, it only kept E off mine and H's back for a couple of weeks. After the smell of death was gone, he continued his routine, but worse, mostly for H. He would keep up the normal bullying for me, but would now try to grope H and send her a bunch of disgusting messages. Now onto the actual revenge part of the story. Me, H, and Z came up with a revenge plan. Z noticed that E would say lots of horrible things about me, and H, even when he was in the boys' locker room, so he recorded it. Not only that, but he recorded E when he had his tirades about our breakup. H managed to film him trying to grope her with the help of one of her friends, and also screenshotted the messages he sent her. And I talked to his parents, or more like getting yelled at and cussed out by them, when they told me, and I quoted, he was justified to do those things, which I also recorded. Now with all the proof we had, we went to the principal and managed to get a meeting having the principal, me, H, Z, and E. The principal present the issue, and E denied everything. But when it was our turn to talk, oh boy, when it was our turn to talk, Z and H showed the recordings they had of him, but as we were doing that, the door burst open, incoming, entitled Mum and entitled Dad. Entitled Mum was shouting about how the principal didn't have the right to hold her son for this, and that they had to go somewhere or something like that. I couldn't care really, but when they went on a rant about how they did so much for this school and how they are such nice people, and all the proof we had was somehow fake. However, I had the recordings of them cussing me out and saying how their son was justified. Now I wish I could have stayed around to see their faces of the parents when the principal called them out on their shit, but he told me, H, and Z to get out. Oh. However, as we were laughing to ourselves in the hall, we heard some stuff along the lines of, "You were lying to me about these events, and E will be suspended until I figured out everything else you've been lying about." Later, though, I found out through E's that the ex's parents actually donated a big amount of to the school, which was pretty much them saying, "Let my son pass his classes even though he has bad grades," but was officially deemed as a donation since the principal didn't want to take any more of this. So he decided to ban E from the ex from coming to school for the rest of the year, and him having to stay back here. Now, since my school is separated into 2 campuses, my class will be moving to the other campus next year, which while he will be staying at this one, but knowing his parents, they would probably have him move schools. However, I wouldn't have to deal with him anymore, or at least in a long time. This happened a month ago, and ever since then I haven't heard anything from the ex. H has got a boyfriend, which Z did an FBI style check on, and Z also confesses to me. So things ended up pretty great, but as I learned that you never know someone's true colours unless you're really close friends, date, and then break up, I guess. Okay. Honestly, this is pretty good. I mean, these are, what was this, middle school age? But yeah, I think this is just a classic case of bad parents raise bad children. But yeah, it was great for the kids to tag team together, and I'm loving the protective brother. You gotta love something like this. There's no comments. That's unfortunate. I was wanting some good comments, but no, apparently it's too new, unfortunately. But yes, I liked that story. It was funny. Yes, I'm very much enjoying the kids getting revenge stuff. That's always fun. Doesn't always have to be an adult. And again, I like the fact that no one's actually had to resort to doing anything especially underhanded or anything. Okay guys, so that is it for today's stories. And so the moral for today's stories is always remember to keep your receipts. I would just like to point out, I did not actually coordinate these stories. I just kind of picked them randomly based on what was popular news stories at the time when I was looking for them. But it just so happens that for 2 out of 3 stories, the pro-revenge has pretty much relied on you keeping evidence and keeping your receipts. So I guess that's our lesson for today. Always, when you're in a bad situation, make sure that you've got receipts for everything, because you never know, you may need it for your r/revenge later on. So guys, that's it for today's story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe for more on this channel. And always remember to keep your receipts. See you guys next time. Bye!